Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anaina,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we watched recently.
And today we're doing Conclave by Edward Berger.
Eminence! Eminences. Although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears. I know what prompted the dean of the college to enter the Holy Father's room.
So, it's the Pope movie. It's the new Pope movie, which won at the BAFTAs. It's very hard to give a description about this film that's like in depth because it's not like hard to define. It's the movie where the Pope dies and they elect the new Pope. It's simple as that, really. What really the film is about is the internal politics of the Vatican Church and how all of that works out within also the current socio-political climate and everything, different factions. And honestly, it's an acting movie. I feel the best way to describe this is it's the acting movie where you get all of these actors and you just like give them different roles to like act with each other. It makes sense why this film like got best ensemble, honestly, at SAG, because I'm like, yeah, the entire point of this film is to just showcase that. And I think the writing is, how do I put this? Film is nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay.
I was just gonna ask, what is it adapted from?
It's based on the novel by Robert Harris. So the film writer Peter Strawn, who adapts it from Robert Harris's novel, right? It's fictional, obviously. It's not based on any real event. And with the writing, I feel it's well done in how every character feels fully realized. And you can really tell a lot about the characters without having been told any of it, just from very small scenes and how they act and how they appear, right? And I think that is the writing's biggest strong suit, right? This is also a very slow film. This is not like, it's just 2 hours long. It's not a long film. But in a lot of places, it takes its time. It does everything slowly and like methodically very much, which I think is part of the overall idea of like this old institution and everything like that, right? I honestly very much, I don't have much to say about the writing. I think it's good, but it's nothing that makes me genuinely go find moments where you're like, oh, that was such a good example. Like nothing's coming to me like in that moment.
Yeah. So, in that way, it's not a film that's, going to be well received for its plot. It's going to be a film that's going to be well received for its characters.
I agree. I think its characters are what stand out the most, right? You have these factions, which is like, oh, this conservative faction within the church, which just feels like redundant to say. It's not like, but you have this like more conservative faction of the church that is being led by Sergio Castellito, who plays Tedesco. Which is the more conservative. Then there's the more like American, I think he is, John Lithgow, who plays Tremblay. You have the guy who might be the first African pope with Lucian Mismati playing Adeyemi. And then you have Stanley Tucci and Ralph Fiennes, right? Who have their own roles. And like Stanley Tucci's character is like the most progressive member of the church.
Which I find so funny. Sorry. Stanley Tucci is just, he's the gayest straight guy to ever exist. And I'm not surprised that, he's playing the most progressive pope. Random tangent. Sorry. But yeah.
No, fair enough. Honestly, I agree of the like the it makes sense thing. But I also like how they do make him also flawed in his own sense of like, oh, I don't want to be Pope. I know. And then when everyone just kind of pushes him, he becomes so obsessed with kind of being it and like tries treating it as this war and everything. And kind of just see the answer in front of him, kind of. And also, lastly, is Carlos Diaz, who plays Benitez, who is this like member who comes in very end, who's like the Archbishop of Cabo, basically. And his entire character is like, this has been a bishop who's been leading in war-torn areas and everything like that. And that does like play a part later into the film, right? So again, old men locked in a church having discussions, the film
Plus Isabella Rossellini, I'm made to
Plus
believe.
Isabella Rossellini, who's there, does a lot of background acting. The thing is, it's not really highlighted, but she is putting in the work in the end. Like she has small scenes which she's doing a lot with, but it's not very much in the foreground, honestly. Right? That's what the like film's plot is. It's what it's doing. One thing that I specifically like that I was like, ooh, that stands out to me, which is the blocking of this film. Um, to people who don't know, blocking is how you stage your characters, like actors specifically, on set or in front of the camera, how like they appear in the shot. I think there was a lot of scenes of blocking where I was like, I really like this. I think it's just doing those small little storytelling things with its blocking. And I think that stood out to me, which is like, yeah, it's an ensemble film. So how it does that in specific places is like really cool. Right? What else? Oh, good score. Genuinely good score. Score also stands out within this film. Right? And before I get to like the spoiler ending, I want to like overall wrap up like how I feel, which is like I did enjoy this film. I don't think this is a bad film. It's a good film. It's just I think I wanted much more politicking and a bit more of like rougher or like a resolution that felt much more real and less clean cut than was actually given, because I think that's what this film deserved much more or less, right? I feel the way it wraps up feels just like too nice and too pristine for how it's like talking about those things. It should feel messy. It should feel like something wrong happened a bit, like, because that is also inherent in the nature of this thing as well, right? I do really like the scenes of the politicking as well, but it feels a lot like, how in the first season of Game of Thrones, you're like, Ned Stark is a bit naive in how the Game of Thrones is played.
Watched Game of Thrones.
Anyway, so in the first season of Game of Thrones, Ned Stark is kind of naive and he pays the price. He gets his head cut off. Spoiler alert for Game of Thrones. It's been out for a while. You should have watched it. He gets his head cut off. And I feel that should have happened here, but it didn't, kind of thing. I was like, it was much more interesting when the politicking has actual politics. Like the people who are better at the politicking win, even if they're not the nice guys, because it makes much more sense. And the people who are the good guys learn how to politic and get their hands dirty and feel bad about it, but that's the only way they win. I think that is just a much more inherently it's satisfying than what I got. Again, someone else might feel different. Someone else will be like, yes, the characters, how they work, and maybe this is what happens more really. Like, it's me genuinely saying, my pessimistic ass being like, no, this was too nice. The world is mean.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so maybe that's just that. But yeah, that's what I in the end felt like. I was like, but anyways, now last thing, which is the more spoiler thing. So Carlos Diaz's character, the one from Cabo, Cardinal Benitez, in the end gives this impassioned speech after Tedesco is like, oh, this is what happened. Like, there's a bomb that goes off in the church, and everyone survives, but Tedesco is like, this is what happens when you reform things, when you have like mosques and minarets outside, and like, the threat of Islam and like this and that. And Benitez, who's been in Kabul, who's been in like Middle East and has like had those experiences, very much like, oh no, you're wrong. You're talking about this enemy. Who is there? Where are they? Kind of thing. And that impassioned speech gets him the vote. He wins. And then you have the plot twist, which is like, oh, Benitez is intersex, and the last pope knew about that. So now we've elected an intersex pope, and the thing is that Benitez is okay with being intersex, not in a very much sense of like, the church helps him pay for surgery and he elects not to go for the treatment, right? So very much that as well, which is incredibly cool. And I was like, why are we not talking about more of this? And why is Amelia Perez getting attention? I understand why, because that's a plot twist. It's not a twist as much as it's a reveal, but I'm like, that's arguably more interesting or well done at least. Why is that not getting attention?
I just think like again, we've had a lot of opinions about Emilia Perez.
Emilia Perez will catch strays in every episode.
No, but I think it's just there is no conflict, right? around the Pope being intersexed. He just
No.
is. He just is. And that's what I think people are like, no, but why? Why is there no conflict? This is like, let people be happy, man.
Yeah, it's just at the end very much, and I'm like, okay. I do wish like featured a bit more into the plot. Not to say it had conflict, but like he had an insight or something that felt very real with that. But also, it does frame his character more. It does make you understand how this man is empathetic and who he is. But again, it was just me being like, all of these people are too nice. This feels like too unrealistic because it's too nice. And I think that's much more of reflection on me than the film. But that's how I ended up with it.
Fair. I mean, a fun anecdote. I was volunteering at London Film Festival and I was offered the chance to watch this film for free as part of, volunteering at its premiere in London, and I declined, and I'm regretting it a lot now, not just because, it's winning awards, but because it genuinely sounds interesting. So I hope to catch it soon.
If you like a talkie film with like
Oh, I love a
good
talkie
name.
film. I love a talkie film.
Yeah, if you love a talkie film with like a lot of seasoned great actors, very honestly, doing good acting.
Honestly, by the way you're describing it, I think it would do really well as a play, like on stage.
You are very right. You are very right. This would slap as a play. This would, pardon the pun, play well as a play.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It has that performance, and you can even ham it up a bit more. I think, yeah, throw a musical number in there. Make this Amelia Perez again.
I mean, Stanley Tucci in a musical?
But yeah, if that sounds like a film up your alley, I would 100% recommend this. But I also understand this is not for everyone. Yeah. So those were our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us, musical assets from Pixabay. See you again next time.